Sitting up straight, correcting ourselves over and over. Some deep down longing, straightening posture over and over. Knowingly developing this fearless openness, knowing no place better to cultivate this sanity, determined to stay in the center of our pillow. Postures can be lost so easily. Darkness creep under my wandering thoughts, coveting the smallest little sparkles, dragging me 100 miles from here. Sometimes simplicity and strength, coming into the sheer foundation of our own loveliness, living so close to this gut feeling of peace and ease. The fire of your own voice, singing praise to all awakenings. Curled up in front of the fire, at home at last, knowingly bowing to this darkness. Old friend comes in through the back door, ushers itself out the front door. Straightening up again, mind at rest in this soft heart. So tonight, I'd like to, there are kind of 4 pieces to this that I'd like to explore with you. And the first one is really, it's this thing around, they use the language of calm abiding, particularly in the Tibetan schools, And we come here, and a lot of the fundamental practice here, is actually creating this collectedness, And in some ways, I know in Asia it's a lot about effort. Here, I think it's a little bit different. It's actually more about kind of relaxing and connecting, and that's how the collection happens. Now, in the kind of calm abiding in the Tibetan system, they talk about kind of 9 stages. And I kind of break it down. It's more like 3 stages, and it's pretty simple. First of all, unfortunately, there's a word that we do have to use kind of in this sense. It's effort. It was effort to get here, effort. There's so much pieces of this that has to have the effort in it. So there is the effort in this calm abiding, creating the kind of the context for practice to happen in. Typically, we talk about the breath or the body as places to ground the attention. But the second function of it is actually, from that effort, is stabilization. So we simply have to stabilize, And the stabilization is a product somewhat, we think of it as, that effort is doing. It's actually some part of this is just kind of sitting in the center of your experience, and not struggling with it, not trying to get somewhere or be somewhere, but actually just to rest in this stability of attention, And at some point, that stabilizing attention becomes effortless. It's not something. There's no doing left in it. There is simply a recognition, And so this calm abiding is actually something that has, it's kind of has a beginning, and has a kind of stabilization force, and then it has a sense of ease, you know. Oh, so I don't have to push the envelope. I just have to maybe open the envelope, you know. And so that's really the function of this, you know. And of course there's, you know, I was thinking, oh, there are like dozens, literally dozens and dozens of techniques that are based, you know, whether it's mantra or whether it's, I don't know, singing, standing on your head, you know, that all have the same function, is that they do this collecting, you know. And it's necessary for kind of this process that we're in. So I'd like to frame these processes in 4. And the first one is this ability, this calm abiding. Sometimes, you know, I don't like the word, but, you know, we use the word concentration. So it has some of that in it. But we have to be very careful, because there can be a leaning that happens. And then it becomes a process of that somehow there's some getting that happens. And we really are not, that getting is not something that, you know, I know a lot of it's there. And, you know, but there's also, the truth of this is that if you'll just, without any fanfare, if you just sit here, and you just keep straightening up, you know, that you will kind of create the, what is it? It's really the, I was trying to think of it in farming terms, you know, in the sense of, oh, you've tilled the soil and it's all ready for the planting, you know. So really that's what it is. We kind of till. So it takes a little bit of work, but it in itself, once that stabilization is there, and when we recognize that it's really it's a place of ease to kind of sit in that, then there is a natural second piece to this. So there are kind of 4 pieces. One is kind of that calm abiding. Another one is simply, word we use a lot, it's called insight. And then there's sometimes it's referred to as single taste, or of one taste. And then the 4th one is, there are 2 translations I like. One is non-disturbing awareness. But there's actually, I think, a better one, and it's called ordinariness. So really, we're going through this process to get to where? To ordinariness. You know, wow, such a big deal, you know? And yet in ordinariness, you know, the human awakening exists, you know. So, and moving into insight, I would like to read, this is from Master Tian Tai of the 6th century. This is one of the great patriarchs, Xiao Jing Guang. There are many paths for entering the reality of nirvana, but in essence they are all contained within 2 practices: stopping and seeing. Stopping is the primary gate for overcoming the bonds of compulsiveness. I'll read that again, because that's really about the collecting. Stopping is the primary gate for overcoming the bonds of compulsiveness. Seeing is the essential requisite for ending confusion. Stopping is the wholesome resource that nurtures the mind. So that's really, in essence, we're kind of here, nurturing the kind of the steady and stable mind. Seeing is the marvelous art which fosters intuitive understanding. Fostering intuitive understanding. Stopping is the effective cause of attaining concentrative repose. Seeing is the very basis of enlightened wisdom. A person who attains both concentration and wisdom has all the prerequisites for self-help and for helping others. It should be known then that these two techniques are like two wheels of a chariot, the two wings of a bird. If their practice is lopsided, you will fall from the path. Therefore, the sutta says, the one-sided cultivation of the merits of concentration, merits of concentrated repose without practicing understanding is called dullness. To one-sidedly cultivate knowledge without practicing repose is called crazed. Dullness and crazedness, although they are somewhat different, are the same in that they both perpetuate an unwholesome perspective. Not bad, huh? You know? So it really is the first pieces of this is this ability to, first of all, the intent here when we come together like this is simply to stop, you know? And I have to say, I commend you. As I said, nobody left today. But, you know, from a cultural perspective, there is, you busy bees, you know? Even if you're not doing anything. You know what I mean? It's like busy bees. And that has a momentum. And in essence, it's kind of it is a power. And that power is self-perpetuating. So, you know, it's sometimes it's based on really good things, but it keeps generating itself, you know. So we come here, and commendably, there is the practice of stopping. You know, and it is a primary function here. And it's not that we're going anywhere or doing anything. Matter of fact, I wonder sometimes if you know, if I never gave you any practice at all and you just said it. When my first year, probably year and a half, you know, after I kind of met Suzuki Roshi and I tried a bunch of stuff in the 60s, you know. But by the time I ended up in India and stuff, and then in Nepal, and I had a house, and I would sit every morning, but I had no instructions. You know, so I just sat like a bump on a log. Now the problem was that, of course, there was a little bit of thinking going on, you know, and so I was manufacturing continuously because I understood the body stopping, but I didn't understand the rest of it. You know, that you could actually contain or do something with it so that it would eventually find its own kind of balance or stopping point, you know. It took a little while. But that the stopping is so fundamental to how this works, you know. I've been around a lot of different scenes, and what's been interesting to me is that without the stopping, there can be great insights. You know, I mean, being around Krishnamurti and some of these really amazing kind of awakened people, but I didn't see in the community that there was any stabilization. You know, they would have these great aha moments, but there was no containment for it. And it's really one of the fundamentals. I found that this was so, you know, supportive. And especially because I'm kind of ADHD and I'm kind of like all over the map. You think a lot? Ah, yes. You know, you have much company. And so there was this perpetuation, you know, that actually said, okay, how to hold it, how to contain it, you know. And unfortunately, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. You know, it's not like can be the most popular setup, you know. I mean, it's you know, your body's not gonna. If your body's really comfortable sitting here, I'm not so sure. You know, I mean, you try chairs. You know, I've seen everything. You know, I remember my friend Joseph Goldstein. He said he built this kind of chair and bench, you know, and he spent hours kind of doing this thing, and it was all just to get away from this discomfort that, you know, eventually you have to deal with, you know. So in a way, unfortunately, why this can't be that popular is because the first step of stopping is, in a sense, from the cultural perspective, is kind of a train wreck or a car wreck. You know, it's like you slam up against nothing, you know, and there's still your mind going. There's actually still your body going. So that has to all settle in, and that's really what you're doing right now, is kind of settling all that in, you know. But as I said, you could just sit here. It takes a little longer without any instructions, by the way. You know, I will kind of mention that. But at the same time, it's still the same thing. You know, you have to sit there and kind of feel your knee and your back, and the stuff that you know, our habit is that discomfort is something to move away from. Correct? I mean, that's called common sense, right? I mean, everybody does that, right? And here you come and says, oh no, you're not going to do that. You're just actually, you're going to sit there and you're going to feel that discomfort. I mean, what a sales project, you know? I mean, you have to have some masterminds to pull this one off, you know? But that's the thing. It actually is what it is, you know. You sit and you stop, and eventually when everything kind of calms down, you begin another process. And that process is the second process that we refer to as, we call this insight practice. I'm not sure anymore what they mean by that, but that's okay. You know, it means somehow that you are observing from the stopping, you begin to see how it works, you know. So you're really, you know, in a sense, kind of, you're beginning to explore your operating system, you know. And unfortunately, the first part of the operating system is that I'm a great runner. I've been running all my life. And I keep moving around, and you know, and sometimes I think, oh, am I moving away from the discomfort? And I think sometimes, you know, yeah, that's an old story. I like that, you know, and I like adventure, and you know, kind of the world is my oyster or something like that. So, what the heck? But at the same time, I do have to sit, and I have to kind of give attention to, you know. It's a lot of it is, you know, based on the fact that those discomforts is we have all worked strategies out. You know, we are we are an amazing amount of strategies of how to move away from discomfort. You know, and here it's not that. Maybe it's the observing of how you do it is actually what insight is. So how do I move away from discomfort? How do I move away from, some of my old storyline or my fears about what will happen or who I am or how it works? These are all kind of places. They're this is as real as it gets. And at the same time, that when we begin to get that, and not only just get it from an intellectual point of view, because this insight, I like Ajahn Sumedho always, he describes this as intuitive insight. So it's actually, well, what is intuitive? It means that somehow it's not just your thinking, about, like I'm studying this thing. I'm actually feeling this whole thing that's going on, And that feeling, the whole thing, then there are simple things that we all know, like we all have insights, right? I mean, that's the way human intelligence is. It has insights. But it's really what matters here is, where are the insights coming from? And why do we sit here and kind of lounge in the discomfort, of these schedules and, kind of being like a pretzel or whatever. And why? Because actually those insights are first, the primary insights are about who? Who are they about? They're about you, So they are, in a sense, they are based on how I like and dislike things, And actually, the Buddha was not so interested in that, And so we come here, and then this is where this whole process is, that we kind of stabilize, and then you could say that there is a means of we drop down, under, or below, And so the insight isn't just about I and me and mine, because that is our instinctual nature. But these practices are actually our ability to drop below. And as we drop below, then we begin to see kind of the primal pieces of what it is that a human being, not you, not me, but all human beings. So it's actually more of going from the personal to a more universal level, kind of dropping down into the universal. And that's the function of what we call the intuitive insight here. And it's pretty simple stuff, Hell. Oh, that's right. Oh, there's suffering, that it kind of comes with this territory and is part of the human condition. All human beings, due to causes and conditions, suffer. So this is actually a path in itself, is to follow that suffering to its most universal place, when suddenly it's no longer my suffering, it's all beings suffering. That is insight. There is also the fact that the nature of our conditioning is to stabilize, and in a sense it's kind of like we're, with our minds and our senses, we're freezing experience, So we're actually not aware that everything we're experiencing, everything that's experienceable as the objects of experience, are all impermanent phenomena. They aren't solid physical things. They are actually things that are just, we know from molecular science, they're just things that are rising and passing away at tremendous speeds, And so in a way, our minds are trying to stabilize this so we feel safe, right? So you feel safe. And then if you can stabilize it, then you can solidify it. And if you can solidify it, then you're somewhat warping from a deeper, more universal place, the truth. You know, because on one level, intellectually, you know that it's all impermanent, but in actuality, you don't really buy it. You know, and so that's why we do these practices, because we have to get below kind of the surface of everything and actually experience that, oh, everything is change. You know, oh, you know, and that actually releases some of the I, me, mine. You know. And then the third kind of piece, you know, I don't want to go into too much here because it's a lot of it is conceptual, but you know, in a functional way, they use the word, one translation is not self. But, you know, you have to look at it in a kind of two ways. One is that there is a relative self. On the surface, you're having to work with that one. And that is one of the truths, is you're working with the relative self. You know, and we have the precepts, we have how we act, how we speak. All that is part of that surface material. Deep down, it is only a world of change. And that idea of a relative self, as you go deeper, begins to thin. So the process here is diminishing the power of, you could say, the selfishness of the kind of surface material, to get down to this place where, what is it? There is nobody, you know. And if there's nobody, then actually there isn't suffering, and there isn't. Things are still impermanent. But then that thinning out is really what this process is most fundamentally about. You know, as we begin this process of kind of seeing into from the kind of the relative world that we live in, down into the more universal, then as we do that, then there are moments where, in some ways, I'm going to say, you touch reality. And that's where this kind of third piece of, you could say, it's a single taste or one taste. So the world is no longer two, self and other. It is a singularity. And there is a recognition of the singularity of experience. And it's kind of deep down in there, you know. But it's not something, it's something that's there. It's not something, in a sense, I wonder sometimes, is it something you achieve? I don't think so. Even though a lot of culture, Buddhist culture, is based on achieving it. But in another way, it's another way of looking at it is that when there's enough relaxation and enough ease, and that selfishness has been thinned out enough, then there is a recognition. And the recognition is, it's not two. You know, it's not this and that. It is just this. You know, sometimes in the Zen tradition they talked about the suchness of it. So there's just the suchness of it, you know, and you have kind of gotten yourself to a place where you're no longer struggling with this and that, you know. And so there is, now we're talking about when they say one taste, there is already present freedom that has been you all along. It's not something to have achieved, it is something to have recognized. There's a big difference here between achieving and recognizing. And so it's simply you've thinned out the kind of this and that, this dualistic it is a confusion, and there is a relative truth that's necessary. But from what the Buddha was interested in was kind of the deeper place, and that deeper place has this as a recognition, it is not two. It's actually there is just the suchness of this, or you could say the isness of it, And there are many levels to moments, I kind of like the word emptiness of just, where nothing is happening. But we're so, orientated to a charge on any experience. I don't care if it's negative or positive, but it's a charge. And here we're kind of pointing at a place that actually has no charge. So it is, in a sense, invisible. They say it has to be pointed out. You follow? Otherwise you don't see it. And yet, we're talking about a lot of moments of your life. The only thing is that if you could sit for a moment and it was there, you wouldn't notice it because you would already be leaning forward. You would go, oh, this is, empty space. I'll fill it right now, and that's what you do, and you're filling it all the time. But here we're kind of practicing this practice saying, oh, maybe you don't have to do that, I think of John's comment last night about the, in water and that we always are grasping for the inner tube, and somehow you believe that because you've let go when you were a little kid or something, and you're going to drown, And here, what is being said is, oh, no, you're not going to drown. You're going to learn to float. And if you learn to float, then you can let go of the inner tube. You can let go of the object, And in a sense, rest in the nature of your own freedom. That basic, already there freedom. So the fourth of these is sometimes I like the translation of non-disturbing awareness. Okay, non-disturbing awareness, which simply says that it's a stabilized knowing. And the interesting thing about the knowing itself, right now, there's that knows. It's not a problem. Matter of fact, I think it's so cool because it's never, you've never been anything but that. And so you begin to, in a sense, kind of relax into the fact, and it has no age. I like that one too, because it's not something in time. Undisturbed awareness is actually, it's simply that sits in the center. And because it sits in the center, it is not, in a sense you can use this language, it is not fooled by the objects through the senses or the thoughts or the stories or what we make up. Because most of the stuff we make up, truthfully, Not that that's good or bad, but it's just what we do, So here we are, and we have this awareness that's not disturbed, never has been disturbed. As a matter of fact, it's never been anything, and maybe, I don't even know, maybe it was there when you were born, and maybe there's when you die. I don't know. All I know I can recognize it now. And it's all you can do. You can recognize it now, And it's not something, it's not some kind of fireworks or flash in the night or something. It's actually, that's why I like the translation of ordinariness. That suddenly that knows is simply the most ordinary thing. So suddenly all things, and ordinary doesn't mean it's disinterested. Okay, it's not that. I think that's one of the, kind of the corruptions of insight. Because actually, when that awareness is kind of fully engaged, what does it see? It understands. And it understands the fundamentals that, everything I see has the nature of change. Due to the relative selfing process, it suffers. And it's empty, as Ajahn Chah would say, or you could say it's actually an impersonal process from that point of view. But it's simply process. So now you're enlightened. What you going to do with it? I know. We're tenacious creatures. We keep, struggling with our relative reality. But it's also good to know that you're more than that, and that it's not something that you have to achieve, it's something you are, which to me is such a relief, because, for so many years it was all about somehow, if I tried harder, this was the whole teaching, if I tried harder, maybe then, I failed. So I gave up. And then when I gave up, I started to see, hey, I know how this works now. It took all that just to find this out, But this is the path. We all kind of do it our way, And you're going to struggle as much as you need to. I'm just trying to tell you that, don't do too much. It's really highly overrated, and it doesn't necessarily get you where you want to be. I mean, I think that all these, I've been around a lot of teachers in my time, and some teachers try to capture you, and some try to do this or that, or come to my retreats, or do this or do that, and I think a teacher should set you free. That means go, get lost, go live a life, but you need some kind of tools of experience, and that's really what the foundations of I hope, that's what's really happens here, you are your greatest teacher, and I know if I was really smart, it would be different, but I'm not, Do I have a lot of understanding and faith and a lot of hours into this? Yes. But I also know from this perspective that you have everything, and you've been walking around with everything your whole life, and you have suffered and struggled, you've climbed, like me, 100 mountains, and rolled down a few. But here you are, And so, what can you do when you know this? Have you ever heard, can you love yourself? What's love yourself? What does that mean? It means like all my things I've done, terrible, whatever. No, It's about this essential nature that is so precious, that was there when you were born and you've struggled, but now if you can turn around and begin to recognize that, in that way, that awareness has cared for you the whole time, and has been, in a way, it's been a path or a teacher without your knowledge. How's that? Sitting up straight, correcting ourselves over and over. Some deep down longing, straightening posture over and over. Knowingly developing this fearless openness, knowing no place better to cultivate this sanity, determined to stay in the center of our pillow. The posture can be lost so easily. Darkness creep under your wondering thoughts, coveting the smallest of little sparkles, dragging us 100 miles from here. How to avoid these seductive cries, stories seeming more real than this place I sit. Stories seeming more real than this place I sit. How to overcome the sharp edges of a dead past, or conjure up a perfect future. Sometimes simplicity and strength, coming into the sheer foundation of your own loveliness. Living so close to this gut feeling of peace and ease. The fire of your own voice, singing praise to all awakenings. Curled up in front of the fire at home at last. Curled up in front of the fire at home at last. Knowingly bowing to all darkness. Old friend coming in the back door, ushering itself out the front door. Straightening up again. Mind at rest in this soft heart. Let's just sit for a moment. Turn all the spaghetti off. No, I think I know some of it.